Hello everybody and welcome back to a new video. Yes. Today we'll be doing a second time video that I did a year ago. My trade deadline predictions. Last year it was one of my best videos at the time, and I think it even was my best video at the time, and I had a blast making it, so I wanted to make it for you guys again. But before this video starts, don't be scared to leave a like, subscribe, and let's get into it. I also just wanted to say, for all the clips you're going to be seeing, the highlights, the players, I will be leaving in the description all the channels that I used, all the videos I used and their channels in the description, as I'm saying. So as I did last year, there will be my prediction and my father's prediction. So let's hop into it. So at number 49 are my 52nd. We have Lane Thomas, who's on an excellent season right now. What a pickup it was for Washington. They got for John Lester. What a steal. But both me and my father, we predict that Lane Thomas will stay with Washington and keep on going with this young core. He's kind of becoming the veteran of this team. At number 51, we have Teoscar Hernandez, presently with the Mariners. Right now, he's not having the greatest season, but he's a very good late year guy. First half he usually struggles, second half he's usually good. So I would expect him to get warm. With that, I predict him staying with the Mariners, while my father predicts he's going to be going with the Angels. At number 50, we have DeYoung. DeYoung kind of arriving at the end of his career, but kind of having a resurgence. He's having a pretty good year as a backup catcher, and I think there's a lot of teams that would be interested in having him. My father says he's going to stay, but I think he'd be a great acquisition for the Giants. A veteran that could really help a young team, a young pitching staff, a young offensive core, and I think DeYoung, with the experience he has in deep playoff runs and in a World Series ring, could really help. Now, at number 49, we got Carlos Santana. Carlos Santana, another player that's coming towards the end of his career. He doesn't have too much time left, and he's been having not a great season, but an okay season with the Pirates. A team that's winning, but also a team that's very young. So I think they're going to want to trade him away to allow more young players to play. I predict him going back to the Guardians. I think he'd be a perfect fit for that team. Add some power, add some great plate discipline, and I think he'd be a great pickup. And my father says he will be going with the Brewers. Now we have at 45, we have old man Rich Hill. I don't know how many seasons Rich Hill has left in the books, but I don't think there's too many left, as a few players we've talked about, DeYoung and Carlos Santana. And as he is a Pittsburgh native, and this is his childhood team, I think, and my father also thinks, that he will be staying the rest of the year with Pirates. I don't think he cares too much about winning a ring, but I think he wants to play with this young, exciting team. Now we get into a plethora of relievers. First off, we got Tigers, Jason Foley. He's still young. I'm pretty sure he's like 27. He still has a few years remaining before he even hits arbitration. So with that, I think that the Tigers should keep him and will keep him, as my father thinks he will be going with the Yankees. Tigers closer Alex Lang. I think Alex Lang is a phenomenal pitcher, and I think that in a new generation of Tigers that is coming, he should be a part of that team. But he will also have a lot of value, so if you want to move him, you do have other bullpen pieces. So I think he's going to stay with the Tigers. My father thinks he's going to be going to Boston. But whatever Tigers decide to do, I don't think there's a wrong decision depending on the trade that is presented. Now we move on to the Washington Nationals closer, Kyle Finnegan. Kyle Finnegan, it's an interesting case because, he still has a lot of years of contract, and you still have him under your grasp for a little bit. He's been struggling a little this year, but he is a very good pitcher with a lot of nasty stuff. He's had some great innings, he's had some bad endings, but he throws the ball really hard, and he's good. It's just that he's a little old. He's 30, 31, if I'm not mistaken. So if there's a chance to trade him, I think his value is high, and it'd be the perfect year. So with that, I I think he's going to be going to the Astros, while my father thinks he's going to be going to the Giants. Now moving on to the guy that would probably take the closing role if Kyle Finnegan were to be traded, which is Hunter Harvey. They have him as a trade candidate, but I'm going to be honest, I don't think there's a world where you trade him. He's really been good this year. He's still young. I think he's 27, 28. I don't think he's that old. Could be wrong. So with that, both my father and I presume that he's going to be staying, and we both think that he is the next closer of the Washington Nationals. Now moving on to a lot of backup players, starting off with Nick Senzel. Nick Senzel, hype prospect when he was younger, but he never really became anything special except for that first year where he started on fire. But he's a great utility guy, plays pretty much everywhere and really can help a team. But with the Reds competing, we both say that there's no reason for him to get traded. This is the type of player that you want during the season and also during the playoff, because he brings good defense, a good base runner, and can hit lefties mostly, but he's a good player, so we both don't think he's going to be traded. Now we move to the D-backs. Josh Rojas, who I think is kind of becoming a platoon player. Last year he was more an everyday, and 2 years ago he was more of an everyday player, but with this young core of Arizona Diamondback players coming up, I think he's kind of going into a platoon role. I don't know if his contract is up at the end of the year, but even so, I think that the Diamondbacks are kind of in the same situation with the Reds, where they're competing for this division and they still have a legit chance. And I think Josh Rojas is something that could actually help them because of his platoon role. So we both say that he's going to be staying also with the team. Now moving on to former super prospect in Jo Adell. A few years ago, he was an untouchable prospect because he was supposed to have 5 tools and be the next great outfielder to pair along with Mike Trout. It never came to be. He still has plus tools, and I do think that going out of LA would be the best thing for his career. So my father says he's going to stay, and I think he will be going to the Dodgers. I think he's a type of Dodger player that they could retool, really go back, reevaluate his mechanics, and make him into a superstar like they do with so many players. So I think Jo Adell would be a great fit for there, and could be a player that takes his next step going away from Los Angeles into another Los Angeles club. Yeah, now we're moving on to Bobby Dalbec at 40. Bobby Dalbec is an interesting case because, he's a guy that kind of gets on these hot streaks where he becomes unbeatable, hits everything, and he's a guy that plays everywhere. He's a better at first. His defense, otherwise, I don't think is incredible, but he's still young. I still think he has time. Depending on the offer, I'd be very shocked for him to move. So that's why I have him staying with the Red Sox, and he's a good bench bat and all of that. And my father has him going to the Rays, an interleague trade. So now we're moving on to a very interesting trade candidate, Joey Bart. I think Joey Bart, another one of these great prospects who was supposed to become the next Buster Posey, was supposed to take over that catching position in San Francisco, and I think he just had too much pressure on him. But it's something where he still has great tools. He has power. He has great defense. I think he's the best framer in baseball, and I think that's still stuff that play at the MLB level. He just needs to be more consistent with the bat, and he's going to be an everyday player. I think that right now he's more leaning towards a backup role, but I think that with the years could take over an everyday position. My father has him going to the Reds, and I have him going to the Yankees. Yankees talking about they want some catching, and I think this is a guy that they could have this year and kind of form him into an everyday player progressively over the next few years, and I think he'd be a great fit there. Now moving on to a very, very interesting player, Tyler O'Neill. Oh my god, 2 years ago he was known as the best left fielder in baseball, I think, and I don't know what happened to this guy. He still has like 5 tools. He has power, great defense, speed, it's incredible how far this guy's dropped, but I still do see flashes of him being great. My father has him going to the Padres, and I think it's more like a dream of mine because as I am Canadian and he is Canadian, seeing him go with the Jays, that'd be incredible. You still have control. Obviously, there's going to be a great offer. You're going to have to do a huge offer to try to get him, but I'd love that. And hopefully he could rekindle this this flame. He'd probably more be a platoon role over this year, but next year would probably take over an everyday role, you know. Now moving on to number 37, Blake Snell. Blake Snell, this guy, man. Over the last two years, he was okay. He was a good pitcher, probably a 3-4 kind of guy. And even the start this year, he was horrendous. And then as soon as he made that start versus the Rays, it's like his season turned around, and he's been pitching with this anger, with something just pushing him, and it's been so fun to watch. Kind of going back to his Cy Young year. My father has him going to Boston. Well, I think he'd be an excellent addition to the Orioles. Kind of become that ace, something that I don't think the Orioles have yet. They have a lot of good pitchers, but I don't think they have a great one. And if Snell can continue his run of late and go into an Orioles role, I think it'd be amazing. And I think that would be another way to catapult them into a very serious AL East threat. Now moving on to Blake Snell's teammate, Josh Hader. I'm not too sure why he's on this list, because I don't think there's really a reason for the Padres to trade him, because they still have another year, I think. Is this his final year? Let me just check. Okay, so yeah, Josh Hader is a free agent at the end of the year. You know, that kind of changes my thoughts a little, but the thing is, Blake Snell is a guy that I think is replaceable. But Josh Hader isn't, you know. If you still have these aspirations of going to the playoffs, I don't think you can move Josh Hader. And that is why I think he's going to stay. He's still dominant. I don't think there's a reason to trade him, if I'm being honest. Now moving on to number 35. Long-time Chicago Cub, Kyle Hendricks. I don't know the year he's been having this year. He's been having a Kyle Hendricks year, 3.57 ERA. Has made 10 starts. He's been okay. He is a free agent at the end of this year, but he has an option. I'd be very surprised to see him go, if I'm being honest, because of his career with the Chicago Cubs. He's been there since he was since he was 24 in 2014, and he's been really a face of Chicago. Not really a face, but you know, a guy you know he's going to be there, and you know what you're going to get. He's never going to be this superstar pitcher, but he's going to be pretty good. And he's been good for the last few years. Last 2 years were a little iffy, but before that he was their best pitcher. And I still think he has that inside of him. He's a little older, but I still think it plays. So that's why I have him staying. And I would love to see him play the rest of his career with the Cubs. And my father has him going to the Mariners. Now moving on to number 34. He's presently teammates with the Kyle Hendricks, Michael Fulmer. Michael Fulmer, what can I say? You know, he's having an abysmal season. He was really good in his rookie year. Even his second year, he was pretty good. And then he kind of fell off until 2021, where he kind of became an everyday bullpen piece. And that's where he really found himself. 2020, he had a great year. Kind of struggled with Minnesota, was still good. But then he came to Chicago, signed that contract, and it's not paid off at all. I do still think he has some elite stuff, so he will be. There's a club that's going to be invested in getting him, so that's why I have him going to D-backs, while my father has him staying with the Cubs. Sorry. Now moving on to Chris Stratton, presently with the St. Louis Cardinals. He's having a 4.07 ERA, so about average season. He's more of like a depth piece to add to a bullpen, so that's why I have him going to the Rays. And my father has him staying with the Cardinals. Now moving on to number 32. This guy's going to be a hot commodity. Jordan Hicks. Jordan Hicks, fireball, probably throws the hardest in consistently. He's a free agent at the end of the year. He's having an okay season, ups and downs. Struggled more at the beginning of the season, but has kind of found his own lately. Is the closer on a Cardinals team that is nothing special. But I do still think, because of how hard he throws, he has immense value. And that's why I have him going to the Angels. My father has him staying with the Cardinals. But the Angels, I think he's the type of guy that the Angels love. Throws hard. I think he would fit perfectly in that team. Now moving on to 31, Jose Cisnero. He is another Tigers player. He's having a phenomenal season. Another one of these bullpen guys with the Tigers that are doing so well. The Tigers, it's like their bullpen every year. You know, they're going to trade Gregory Soto. They're going to trade two other pitchers, but they're going to find these guys like Jose Cisnero, who is having another incredible year. You know, his whole career has actually been pretty good. He's just not been really talked about and hasn't really got the opportunity to play yearly, I mean. But he's having a great season. He's kind of old. He's 34. I know he's free agent at the end of the year, so probably surely going to get traded. And with that, I am going to the Reds. I think he'd be a very good addition to that Reds bullpen. Something that we don't hear too many people talk about except from Alexis Diaz. So I think he'd be a perfect fit for the team, and my father has him staying with the Tigers. Now moving on to number 30, we have Brad Hand. Brad Hand is having a terrible season, but he did decide to go play in Coors. Something that you can't really say much about. Obviously, Coors, your numbers are not going to be great. He is coming off a great season with the Phillies, where he had 2.8 ERA. He's somebody that even when he's having a bad season, people are going to take a risk on him because he's a guy that's been in the league a long time. He's a lefty with nasty stuff. He's terrible in clutch games, but there's a team that's going to take a chance on him. He's not going to be a big guy to go get, not going to take much, so I think he's going to be going to the Pirates, while my father thinks he's going to stay with the Rockies. Now we're moving on to number 29. Probably one of the most sought-after bats I think that will be available. We have CJ Cron. CJ Cron, who's in the final year of his 2-year extension that he signed. He's with the Rockies. He's not having the same year he had last year. Last year he was better, and even in 2021 with the Rockies he was even better. But he's having a good enough season. The power you would like to see it go a little higher. He's not hitting as many doubles. He's not hitting the ball out as much. But I do still think he's a guy that teams would be interested at going to pick up. I think he'd be a great fit for the Giants to add a serious threat and a pretty good defender at first. And my father says he's going to be staying with the Rockies. Now moving on to number 28 and starting a plethora of Red Sox players, we have Adam Duvall. Adam Duvall is an interesting case because he is a free agent at the end of the year. He's having an amazing season this year, though he's only played 36 games. I don't know if he's back yet, if I'm honest. I don't know if he's still injured. I don't see it anywhere, so I guess he's back. He's not played much this year, so I think he's gonna be probably a guy that's gonna stay. They have no reason to trade him. I don't think he's gonna have great value, and if your team's still trying to compete, he's a piece that can help you. And my father believes the same thing. Now we're moving on to Nick Pivetta. Nick Pivetta, Canadian-born player. You know, he's kind of just open the role as just an inning eater. He's never going to have a low ERA. It's always going to be in the 4.5 around. But he's going to eat innings. You know, he's become kind of a bullpen piece as he usually does near the end of the year. But he's now just a bullpen piece. Doesn't start anymore. And I think it's something where, you know, I think he's going to go to the Guardians. I think he'd be a great pickup, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if he stays, and my father says the Padres. Now we're moving on to another teammate in James Paxton. What a comeback story from James Paxton. You know, after having Tommy John missing almost like 2 seasons, now he's coming back, and he has a 3.51 ERA, 59 innings. His fastball is at 97 constantly. You know, it's kind of going back to his 2017 years, 2016, 2014, his years with the Seattle Mariners. I think he's a great pitcher, and I really don't know what way that they will be leaning, but I do think that he's a guy that should be traded, and that's why I predict that he will be traded to the Rangers, while my father says the Jays. Now we're moving on to Justin Turner, who has an option for next year. He's having a great season this year, one of his best recent seasons, proving that, you know, he's a veteran that just does everything correctly. You know, His doubles have continued. His home runs, he's already having more than he had last year. He has a chance to beat his career high. He's been very good around that young core. And that's why me and my father both think he will be staying with the Red Sox. Now we are moving on to number 24, Paul DeYoung. Paul DeYoung, interesting case if I'm being honest, because like his OPS is around 750, so he's above league average, but his last 4 seasons before that have been horrendous. He plays great defense, something that you can expect, and he has pop in that bat, but he's not consistent enough for a team to make him an everyday player. I wouldn't expect it. So that's why I have him going to the Braves. I think he'd be a very good utility guy. And my father has him going to the Yankees to be another utility guy. Now we're moving on to number 23, Aaron Savali. He's with the Guardians right now. He's having a phenomenal year. I didn't even know he had that good of a year. 2.65 ERA, 57 innings. He's having a very good season. On a Guardian team that have kind of been lackluster, but I do presume that they're going to do the same thing they did last year and just have a crazy second half. I would love to see it because I'm a big Guardians fan. He's probably a trade candidate because, the year he's having right now is above usually what he does. He's still young at 28, and you still have free agent. You still have him until 2026. But arbitrations start after this year, if I'm not mistaken. So I presume that Guardians, knowing them, not wanting to pay too expensive, I think they're going to go to the Rays. I think Aaron Savali is a perfect fit for that Rays team. Something where this year he'd probably be more of a 5th starter or a long reliever. But over the next few years, they would mold him into a very good starter. Kind of what they did with Drew Rasmussen, with Jeffrey Springs, and all those pieces. And my father has him going to the Twins. Now moving on to number 22, Ronaldo Lopez. I don't know the year Ronaldo Lopez is, but now looking at his stats, it's not amazing. 4.50 ERA, but he's coming off 2 great seasons, so I do still think he has that in him. As you can see, he eats a lot of innings. He's already at 40 innings this year, so he's probably going to destroy his reliever plateau. I do think he is a free agent at the end of the year, and with Chicago kind of being this absolute dumpster fire, I do expect him to be traded, and I think he would be a great fit for the Mariners, while my father thinks he would be a great fit for the Rangers. Now moving on to his teammate, Keenan Middleton. Keenan Middleton having an absolutely great year, 36 appearances, 34 innings, 2.91 ERA. His FIP is a lot higher, but that means he strikes out a lot of batters. 44 and 34 innings. That's very good. I think, is he a free agent at the end of the year? He is a free agent at the end of the year. Yes, he is. And, I have him going to the D-backs. I think he'd be a great fit, while my father thinks he will be staying. Now moving on to another teammate in Joe Kelly. Joe Kelly has an option, but I don't know if it's going to be picked up. He's not having a great year, but I don't even think he's going to have many suitors. But he's somebody that when he plays in those big games, he becomes completely another guy. He has nasty stuff. He just needs to put it together. And I think with the right club, he could put it together. And that's why I think he will be going back to the Dodgers to try to repeat that 2020 ring. And my father thinks he's going to be staying. Now moving on to number 16, we have Oakland A's starter Paul Blackburn. He still has a few years of control. He's starting arbitration next year. He is 29, so he's a little bit on the older side, and he does still have a little value because he is an innings eater, but he's been terrible this year. 5.48 ERA. There's nothing special coming off an all-star appearance. With that in mind, I do think that he won't be moving at all. Now we're moving on to Brooks Raley. Brooks Raley is coming on. He's having a great year this year with the Mets. Mets, it's interesting to see what they will be doing this year, because Brooks Raley is somebody you have control over the next few years. He's 35, so he's older. He has one of the nastiest off speed I've ever seen. Kind of looks like a wiffle ball, a blitz ball when he throws it. I kind of think he's going to be going, yes, I said it, to the Yankees. New York trade. I think it'd be an awesome moment, and I think it'd be a great fit for the Yankees. And my father thinks he's going to be staying with the Mets. Now moving on to Brooks Raley teammate, former Oakland A, Mark Canha. Mark Canha is having, not the greatest of season like most Mets, but he's been mostly what he usually is, which is a around league average player. His home runs are about as usual. He's not driving much runs in. He's stealing more than usual. Not hitting as many doubles as usual. Not hitting in general as usual. His defense is okay, but he's a clutch guy. He's a guy you want as a bench bat or as a clutch moments guy to face the lefties. So I think he'd be a great pickup. I think he's going to stay with the Mets, and my father also believes it. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised for a team to pick him up because of how clutch this guy is. Now we're moving into some big names. At number 17, I have Lance Lynn. Lance Lynn, yes, this guy has an option for the 2024 season. Don't know if it's going to be taken. I don't know how much the option is, but I think that the year he's having 6.6 ERA, by far the worst year of his career. It's not even close, but he is this veteran that could really help a young squad. I don't think that this 6.6 is what you should expect from him if you go pick him up, because I do still think he's a very good guy, a very good pitcher, and he's the guy that's been to the playoffs multiple times. He's won it before, so I wouldn't be surprised. I think he's even won it twice. Wouldn't be surprised for a team to want to pick him up, and that's why I have him going to the Orioles. I think he'd be very good with that young staff, and my father has him going to the Astros. Now moving on to number 16, Eduardo Rodriguez. Rodriguez, a great season he's having before the injury. I don't know if he's returned yet from the injury. If I'm wrong, I think he is, but I'm not sure. He still has this big contract with the Tigers, so I do not see him getting traded, and he's so good that like Tigers in a few years probably want to compete, and I think A-Rod could be that 3 starter, and a very solid one at that. My father has him going to the Dodgers. Now moving on to a former Dodger, presently the center fielder for the Chicago Cubs, Cody Bellinger, one of the hottest commodities at this year's trade deadline, having 888 OPS, kind of has rekindled what we thought he was going to be. Last few years, 654, 542, he was nothing special compared. So, even in 2020, 789, he's having a better year than his 2018 year, who was a pretty good year. I know he's only played 63 games, so he's about 30 games behind everybody else, but that's still 888 OPS, 12 home runs, 35 RBIs, 12 stolen bases, which is probably going to be his highest stolen base year of his career. He's hitting at 308, which is the highest presently at his career. So I think he's going to be a hot commodity. I really do think that a team will be interested at picking him up because there's a mutual option, and he's still young at 28. I do think there's going to be a lot of people wanting to get him, and that's why I have him going to the Yankees, and my father does as well. He'd be a great fit there. Now moving on to Tommy Pham. I don't know why Tommy Pham in the ranking is higher than Cody Bellinger, but Tommy Pham, 35, having a great year right now. 840 OPS off the bench, even though he's 72 games, so he's playing often. He's hitting 277, good walks, good on base, and a great slugging, or a decent slugging. He's hitting the ball out, 9 home runs. He's going to be a good bench bat for the team that he picks up, that picks him up. So I think he'd be a great fit for the Mariners, while my father thinks he's going to stay with the Mets. Now moving on to number 13, Michael Lorenzen, the sole all-star for the Detroit Tigers, presently having a 3.75 ERA, which is one of the best seasons of his career, if we're being honest. And he's been a starter, so he's having a pretty good season, actually. I didn't think he was having this good of a season. It's not an amazing season, but this is a 4 starter, a guy that probably is a bullpen piece in the playoffs, and I think he will be another hot commodity because he won't be too expensive, and he is a free agent at the end of the year, and he still is. He's not that old at 31. I think he will be going to the Brewers, while my father thinks he's going to be going to the D-backs. Now moving on to one of the biggest pitchers available that we're not sure what's going to happen, Shane Bieber. Usually with a pitcher like this, I wouldn't expect him to get traded. He's not having the greatest year so far, but he is a very good pitcher. But it's just that, knowing the history of the Cleveland Guardians not wanting to trade, not wanting to keep and pay their pitchers. Shane Bieber is still 28. If you go pick him up, you have another year of arbitration before he becomes a free agent. So you get a guy for another year. I think a lot of teams will be interested in that. Kind of makes me think of the Mike Clevenger, the Corey Kluber, the Trevor Bauer, how they were great pitchers and Guardians didn't want to pay him, so they traded him away. And Guardians have their next, rotations coming with Daniel Espino, Gavin Williams, they had Tristan McKenzie. So they still have pitching. So I do expect them to trade him. I think he will have a lot of value because he's a former Cy Young. He's coming off a great season. 3.77 is nothing bad. His strikeout numbers are a little lower than we would want, but I do think that it's something where he can bring that back to where it was. I think that he's a great pitcher, and I predict he will be going to the Reds. I think kind of following in Trevor Bauer's footsteps, and I think he'd be a perfect fit for a young Reds that are going to hope to compete this year, and then next year even take another step forward. I think he'd be that ace to pair along, kind of take away some pressure from Nick Lodolo, from Andrew Abbott, and from Hunter Green. And my father says the Angels. Now moving on to one of the biggest reliever names that will be available at this deadline. David Robertson is having a phenomenal year with the Mets, and I think this is one of the pieces that the Mets would really be open to trading, and I do expect them to get traded because the Mets, we don't even know what they're going to do, but this is a guy that a lot of team will be interested kind of in last year. He was very good, and then he got traded to the Phillies this year. He's been even better, so I do expect him to get traded. I presume he will be going to the Brewers. I think he'd be a great add to that back end, add another insurance to Devin Williams. Brewers, a team that are hoping in the second half to take a step forward and actually win this Central, something that they can really easily do for being open. And my father thinks he'd be a great fit for the Giants. Now moving into number 10, to the top 10. Another huge starter. This is probably the best starter that you could pick up who would not cost you the world, in Marcus Stroman. You know where you're going to get. He's a very reliable guy. He's having a great year. One of the best seasons of his career so far. His ERA is the lowest it's ever been at 2.88, and you have another year of control, I think. No, it's a player option, so it depends on what he wants. I think this is an absolute stud. I think this guy is swagger. He brings energy. I know he has some locker room problems, but hey, you're going into the playoffs. You want somebody that's hype like Marcus Stroman. He's so good. He's great defensively. He's great with your boys. He backs them up. He's not the tallest guy, but he plays like he is. He's 32. He's still young. And he's usually a guy that gets better in the big games. So with that, my father has him going to the Phillies, while I think he will be reunited to where he began his career in Toronto. Just imagine. He's a guy that always backs up Alek Manoah, and he is a veteran that's gone with a lot of problems. And he kind of pitches like Manoah, where they don't have the elite stuff, but they battle. And I think Marcus Stroman is somebody that could really help Manoah kind of take some pressure off him and kind of help him, through some of his problems. And I, as a Blue Jay fan, would love that. Now moving into one of the most interesting pitcher pieces, which is Jack Flaherty of the St. Louis Cardinals. Jack Flaherty not having a great year, but this is somebody that we all know. He can have one of the best second halves you've ever seen, as he did in 2019, where he came fourth in the Cy Young, where he had this second half stretch that was unbelievable. I still think that this guy is really good. I know he hasn't had a good year this year, but even last year he wasn't amazing, but that was off it. He's coming back from an injury, in 2021 he was really good. 2020, you can let it go, it was the COVID season. 2020 2017. 2019, he was amazing. 2018, he was fantastic. So this is a guy that has a lot of upside. He is a free agent at the end of the year, but he's a guy that probably is going to sign not a big deal because he is going to be 28 next year. So I can see him signing a 1-year deal with whatever team picks him up. And that's why I have him going to the Angels. I think he'd be a great fit, depending on what way the Angels swing, but I do think he would be a perfect fit, while my father thinks he'd be a great fit for the Reds. Now we're moving on to arguably the best bullpen piece that you could go pick up in the Royals, Scott Barlow. I say best bullpen piece because he has some of the most elite stuff that is available. His season he's having is a 4.89 ERA. He's not having a great season, but you look at his 2 seasons before, 2022, 2.18 ERA in 74 innings, and in 2021, 2.42 ERA in 74 innings. Exactly the same amount of innings those 2 years. And yes, he's taken a step down, but I don't think it's that bad. I do still think that he can be better. You know, his FIP is 3.47. So the year that he's having right now is not indicative of the ERA he's having. His ERA should be way lower. So just say that this guy is elite. You have him for another year after this. That's why I think he will be going to the Twins interleague trade. I think he'd be great for that team. Kind of add some stability at the end of that bullpen, while my father thinks he'd go to the Reds. And now we're moving on to Jordan Montgomery. Jordan Montgomery, who, you know, I think since joining the Cardinals has taken this step into something that we never really thought he was. You know, he used to be with the Yankees, and everybody knew him as a very good 3-4 guy. But since he's joined the Cardinals, you know, he's kind of been their ace. Although he's not flashy, he doesn't have these huge strikeout numbers, he's still very good, and he eats innings. And this year in 19 starts, 3.14 ERA. Last year he had 11 starts with them, 3.11. He's been very good, has been by far their best pitcher. But because he's a free agent at the end of the year, I do expect them to trade him, and I think he's going to be something that a lot of teams are very interested in. And I do think he will be going to the Padres, while my father thinks he will be staying with the Cardinals. Now moving into the top 6. At number 6, we have Jeimer Candelario. Probably the best year of his career. I'm gonna look. No, it's like the second best year of his career. You know, the last 2 seasons, last year he was absolutely terrible with Detroit, and the year before he was above average, but he wasn't what his 2020 stats were. And his 2020 stats were in a shortened season. But so far in 88 games, he's hitting 260, on base of 336, a 480 slugging, 816 OPS. He's hitting the ball out more than ever in his career. He is driving more runs in. He's hitting a lot more doubles, something that he is very, very good at. You know, and he plays an absolute elite defense. He's only 29, and he's something that next year, if you decide to re-sign him, is not going to cost you the world. So that's why me and my father both think that he will go to the Brewers. I think he's going to be a great fit, can play first, can play third. I think he could be your everyday third baseman, which is something right now I don't think the Brewers have. You know, Brian Anderson is just playing everywhere, but you need that stability, that defense at third. And I think Jeimer Candelario, a switch hitter that hits well from both sides, that brings you a great present, a guy that draws at that long. I think he's something that could really, really help this Brewers lineup. Now moving into the top 5. At number 5, we have Lucas Giolito. Yes, this guy, again, this guy's such a question mark every year, because he's going to have 5 great starts, and he's going to have 1 blow-up start. 5 great starts, blow-up start. 5 great starts, 2 blow-up starts. So it's like, I don't know what to say. It's his final year. It's for sure he's going to get traded because he is a hot commodity. He's with Chicago. I think it's going to really help him get out of Chicago, a city that like gets the worst out of every player that plays there. Lucas Giolito, I think, is going to be a great fit. He's probably a guy that's going to sign a contract. He's not going to sign a contract with the team that picks him up. I think he's a guy that's going to go away after. So, and he's going to cost a lot. Chicago's a team that asks for a lot out of their players. So that's why I think that he will be going to the Yankees. I think he'd be a great fit. He's gonna have to trim that beard, but the Yankees, a team that really need that pitching. Even though Giolito is not always the best pitcher, the one thing you know that you're gonna get out of him is he's gonna eat innings, and that's something that Giolito does with the best of them. And that's why I think he usually goes 6-7 starts, 6-7 innings every start. Something that I think the Yankees really need right now. And if they can just get consistent 6 quality innings out of Giolito, it's something that the back end can just finish the game after. So I think he'd be a great pickup for them, and something where they're not going to have to give too much of their big core because they have a very good farm system. My father thinks he will be going to the Rangers. So I lied to you when I said Lucas Giolito was the beginning of the top 5. The top 5 starts now, with number 5 being Dylan Cease, Giolito's teammate. Dylan Cease coming off last year, a 2.20 ERA in 184 innings. Finished second in the Cy Young, 22nd in the MVP, was an absolute stud. This year has not replicated at all the same season, but if you take the time to look at his FIP, he should have a 3.77 ERA. That is what it's indicating compared to his 4.18. It's still a little higher than what you would want out of Dylan Cease, but for a guy that you have control over for next 2 seasons in just arbitration, you will have to give up a lot for, but I think he's someone that is worth it because he's only going to be 28 starting next year. So the White Sox probably do not want to move him, but for the right price, they will. And I think this is a guy that is worth paying the price of. I've heard reports that a lot of teams are interested, and there's some teams that are willing to give what the White Sox will want to. I think the White Sox is a team that are going to want some everyday players, but will also want some prospects. And one team I think that both my father agree are a perfect fit to accommodate the everyday with the prospect are the Houston Astros. Just imagine adding Dylan Cease to that already juggernaut of a pitching rotation that has not been the same since Justin Verlander has left, but you add Dylan Cease, it makes it a whole lot better. Christian Javier hasn't been great, but he's going to fix it. Framber Valdez, who's probably been the best pitcher in the AL this year. Dylan Cease, imagine. You still have Lance McCullers, that's probably coming back next year. You have a Hunter Brown. They have pieces they can give. They can give up Jose Urquidy. They can give up Luis Garcia. They got some bullpen pieces they can give up. They got some prospects they can give up. I think Dylan Cease would be a perfect fit, and I think he is the type of player that the Astros absolutely love. So this is my prediction, and I really think that Dylan Cease would be an incredible name to pick up. Now we're moving into 4 superstars, I'm going to be honest with you. We're going to be starting with number 4, Nolan Arenado. You're going to be saying, why, Simon? Why are you talking about Nolan Arenado? Because there are reports that they're saying he's non-touchable, but with the right deal, anything can happen. And I think with the year that the Cardinals are having this year, hey, if you get the right deal for Nolan Arenado, I don't think you should say no. He's not having his usual Nolan Arenado debut, but that's not because he hasn't been playing well recently. Recently, he's been playing even better than usual. It's the beginning of the year, the first month and a half where he really struggled. After starting the year completely struggling, being an under MLB regular player, he's brought his OPS all the way back to an 864. I would not be surprised if by the end of the year, Nolan Arenado is a 900 OPS guy. He's a superstar since he has joined St. Louis. A lot of people have said that he wasn't going to be as good, and I think he has been even better. You're going to say, yeah, but his numbers aren't as high. He was playing in courts. That really did help. The home run numbers have dipped. That's normal. But it's impressive to say that he's been so good since joining St. Louis. And as I said, if the offer is there, why say no? Depending what the offer is. If you get an offer that can help you, which is something that it will have to be major league talent and close prospects. But if there's a good offer, I think you should entertain it. That's not saying I don't think you will be traded, but I do think that there is a world, there is a possibility My father doesn't think he's going to be traded either, but don't be surprised. But I think it's more his contract limiting him from being traded than the actual scenario where he is right now. He is 32, so that doesn't mean he has another 5 years left in him. I probably think he has another 3 years left in him of being a good player before he regresses slowly. So as I said, right now, if you can trade him, I don't know, for a big pitching prospect and a big ready pitcher, I think the move should be entertained. Now we're moving on to the top 3, starting with Max Scherzer. There's been a lot of reports that Max Scherzer is open to move his non-trade clause to allow a team to pick him up, a contender. He's not having a great year, 3.9, probably his worst season so far of his career. But that's okay. He is a big game pitcher, and when he has to, he becomes absolutely elite. You know, I think right now people should really look at the chance of picking up Max Scherzer because he's a stud. He's a stud, and I know his contract next year is absolutely huge, but it's just an option. It's a player option. I do think Max Scherzer would take it, but having a 1-year option of Max Scherzer, I think it's probably going to be his final year of his career next year, and I do still think he will be really good. So I don't think he's going to get traded because I don't think the Mets want to trade him. But as I said with Nolan Arenado, if the possibility is there, you have to take it. Because first of all, it loses some money, so you can go pick up somebody that will be more efficient than him, probably for a lot cheaper, and you get something in return. And I think Max Scherzer wouldn't be wrong with it. I think he'd be okay to go to like a very good team. So we will see. I don't think it's going to happen, as I said, but it doesn't mean I don't think it has a chance to happen. Now we're moving on to the second best trade deadline candidate, Juan Soto. You're going to say again, Simon, you're about to say that there's a chance. I think there's more than a chance with Juan Soto. Juan Soto right now is having an incredible season. This guy, it's funny to say that he's underrated. Last year, people were saying he was having a down season and he had around 800 OPS. No, last year he had an 853 OPS in a down season. That's pretty good, huh? Down season, 853 OPS. He hit 27 home runs, which was the lowest of his career, but it's still pretty good, you know. And this year he's at 17 and 908 OPS. His on base is at 417. His on bases, that is absolutely elite. He's been so good. His, again, 87 walks to 84 strikeouts. That's incredible. His defense is nothing special, but I think that the reason why the possibility of Juan Soto getting traded is so likely is because right now the Padres have too many big names. The reason that they're not performing is not because they're missing something. It's because they have too many big names. Juan Soto, Tatis, Machado, Bogarts, these are all guys with big heads. They want to be the star. And that doesn't always butt well together. Last year you saw just with Tatis and Machado how they were butting heads. Or not last year, 2 years ago. It's the exact same thing. But now you add 2 more big heads. Juan Soto is a free agent after next year. And I think it's something where I don't see him signing with the Padres. I don't think it will happen. So I think the Padres, with the season they're having, where they're not going to win the division, that's for sure. And I don't even think they have a chance to make the wild card. They have to turn their season around if they really want to. They have a chance, but I don't think it's going to happen because the Giants are playing great. The D-backs are playing great. The Phillies are still a team that's contending. You have the Marlins that are playing very well. The Dodgers are an absolute juggernaut. So it's going to be hard, and one team has to pass in the Central. So the chances of the Padres, they have to have a great second half. I do not think Juan Soto will not be traded. Not because I don't think he should, because I don't think the Padres will take the chance because they want to compete next year. But my father, on the other hand, does not have the same opinion. He thinks he will be traded to the Yankees. Imagine Juan Soto in the same lineup as Aaron Judge. That would be the best 2-3 punch in MLB and maybe even in MLB history. If that happens, you have to move Judge third, because imagine Juan Soto with the protection of Aaron Judge behind him. They're not going to want to walk him, so that means Soto gets to hit even more. And that short porch in right, that's going to play well for Soto. So, we're going to see. Now moving on to the big fish. The best player in baseball and maybe even the best athlete in MLB history. The Japanese superstar, Shohei Otani. A designated hitter and a pitcher. And you know what? I'm going to be honest. This guy right now is having an excellent hitting season. An OPS above 1,000 at almost 1,100. His OPS plus 1.86. His on base is almost at 400. He's hitting over 300 with 35 home runs already, 7 triples. So he's going to completely shatter his season record in triples. He's going to shatter his home run record. He's going to shatter his RBI because he's already at 76. He's at 11 stolen bases. He's at 16 doubles. He's going to shatter his double record. He's at 69 runs. He's going to shatter his hits record. His average is higher than it's ever been. His on base is higher than it's ever been. His slugging at 680. It's almost at 700. He's 100% winning the MVP just off his offensive numbers. And then you go see what he's been doing as a pitcher. 105 innings, 3.5 ERA. That is still pretty good. He's at 139 strikeouts in 105 innings. He's giving more home runs than he's ever given, but that's something second half he's going to find his way. He's walking more guys too, but Otani's going to be fine. And he is a free agent at the end of the year. So he's going to be making a bank. You know, just this year he's making $30 million. He's an absolute superstar, and I'm going to say it right now. The Angels need to trade him because they're not competing with Otani, and they don't have the team to make it anywhere. So I think you trade him. My father says the Mariners. I say the Dodgers. Imagine LA for LA sending Otani to the Dodgers. You could go get so much for Otani. You're going to go get 3 pitching prospects. You can go get Ryan Pepiot. You can go get so many guys. Diego Cartaya. Get another catcher, man. You know, they have so much, and they have ready. You can go get Dustin May. I know he's injured, but you can go get Dustin May. I think you could even get Walker Buehler to add to that. Gavin Lux. I don't care what you want, you get with Otani, and I don't think there's many teams that can entertain a possibility, but the Dodgers are. And I think Otani, you put him in that team who's already has one of the best combo of Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, and now you add Otani between them, or even I don't know how you would construct that lineup. Mookie Betts, Freeman, Otani, Mookie Betts, Otani, Freeman. Like, it would be absolutely elite. You would have 2 of the best left-handed hitters. But then you add Otani to an already dominant pitching staff. You add him to Kershaw. You add him to Tony Gonsolin. Julio Urias, who hasn't been excellent, but he's still a good pitcher. You have one of the best 4-man rotation to rock into the playoffs with. To add with that, you completely become the best team in the NL, because you know the Braves have a good team, but I don't think they have the superstars that Otani have. But that's another thing. The Braves could, like, everybody should be into. And just imagine how much San Diego gave to go get Juan Soto. I think you have to give even more, even if you just have 1 year of this guy. This is incredible. This is phenomenal. This is the best player we've ever seen, and I'm ever going to see, probably. He's 29. He's going into a free agency where he's going to make absolute bank. He's going to sign the biggest contract in baseball history, and it's for sure. And I do think the Dodgers will be the team to pick him up. So if you guys agreed with me, if you disagree, if whatever your hot opinions are, whatever your opinion is, if there's anybody I missed, leave it in the comments. I'm extremely excited. If you guys like this video, please like it and leave in the comments if you want me to review it. Review the deadline whenever it happens. I will be extremely honored to and love to. Thank you all. If anybody made it here, I really thank you, because I've been rambling on for about an hour now. So thank you, and I hope you guys have a great day.